Hey, welcome to the First Time Homebuyer Workshop with Julie Marion. Today, we're unwrapping the term tenants in the entirety. As I mentioned before, I'm not a lawyer, and anything associated with drafting your deed for your specific situation, absolutely, hands down, you need to hire a lawyer. However, lawyers execute what you want done within the framework of the law. So you need to understand what your options are before paying a lawyer $500 an hour. So let's talk about the definition, the pros and the cons, as there is everything related to real estate with pros and cons. Tenants in the entirety. For all of you empowered women, you may be a little surprised by this one. And the women listening, I would think, may say, what? If you remember last time, we spoke of joint tenancy, and tenants in the entirety is similar. The technical definition is tenants of the entirety is a form of joint tenancy. However, tenants in the entirety is limited to husbands and wives. It's basically joint tenancy with the added feature that the husband controls the property for as long as the parties are married. Now, what did I just say? Yes, the husband controls the property. Now, what is also interesting is about half the United States does not allow this type of property ownership. But we're not done yet. Upon the death of the husband or the wife, the property goes to the remaining spouse. So all in all, tenants in the entirety is a form of joint tenancy, limited to husbands and wives, where the husband controls the property for as long as they're married, and upon the death of the husband or the wife, the property goes to the remaining spouse. It gets a little interesting here, and times have changed, but let's keep exploring this definition. Just as a side, you can imagine having to sort all of this out while you're in the process of buying a specific piece of property. Well, I can't. And this is where I believe Homebuyer Remorse starts. And it is annually over 50%. It's overwhelming. And so yes, here we have content pieces to help you along the way. However, organized all in one place is our premier course, the First Time Homebuyer Workshop, where we link to how everything is connected together, from the 5 professions involved to how to negotiate the best price, what questions to ask the professionals, case studies, urban planning issues, and so much more. Check out our free mini class, Homebuying Chaos Unwrapped, to see how the industry is organized, located at the First Time Homebuyer Workshop. Now, getting back to the differences between joint tenancy and tenants in the entirety, the major difference is that a joint tenant may deed out their interests, say to a friend or a child or whomever. And that defeats the concept of survivorship, and it's not allowed in every state either. Now, with tenants of the entirety, creditors and debts that are owed, say from a lawsuit judgment, as I did have a client that had that, and that came from the husband's side, those entities that are owed money may attach to the property. Sometimes it's referred to like a lien, much like a mechanic's lien or tax lien. Liens, we'll get to those later, but if a property is held like this with tenants of the entirety, it may only attach if it's the husband's debt. The creditors of the wife may not attach to the property since she doesn't have legal interest until the husband passes. Now let's keep an open mind here, because there are some pros to this type of ownership. One we just covered, where the wife's debts cannot be attached to the property. In some cases, that could be a benefit. Second, the wife would be the survivor and can avoid probate, and it protects the home from any claims against the other tenant, meaning when one tenant dies, there is no possibility that their partner will lose the property, and no other heir can evict the surviving spouse. Now, this might be a little confusing, so let's take an example. Say it was a second marriage for the husband, and he wants his second wife to stay in the property without the heir selling the property. I actually have a friend who is in this situation. Her husband was a doctor, he had 7 kids, and she's the second wife. And together they had no children. Well, the kids want her out of the house, but their father wanted her to stay in the house until she passes away, and she has no other resources in this case. after those two events occur, he passes away and she passes away, he wants the house to go to his kids. Now, moreover, the couple must own equal shares and be in agreement about any decision covering the property. Each spouse has a legal right to an equal portion of the property provided they were married at the time the title was received in both of their names. This arrangement creates the right of survivorship. So when one spouse dies, their interest in the property is automatically transferred to their surviving spouse. As I mentioned, there are some states that don't allow tenants in the entirety, and there are a few quirks, such as, for example, some states extend tenancy by the entirety to be extended to domestic partners or common law spouses, and it is sometimes restricted to real estate only. 25 states and Washington, D.C. allow tenancy by the entirety. The states that permit it are Alaska, Arkansas, Delaware, Florida, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Vermont, Virginia, Wyoming. The states that do not allow it are Arizona, Alabama, Colorado, Connecticut, California, Kansas, Georgia, Idaho, Iowa, Louisiana, Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, North Dakota, South Carolina, South Dakota, Washington, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. If your state allows it, there are some cons. Not only is this classification limited to half of our states, it also can be limited to certain types of property. This classification does not protect the property from claims against shared debts. Shared credit cards and loans, for example, those cannot be protected by this type of property ownership. Another con is that both partners must have equal stakes and be in agreement about any decisions concerning the property. Remember too, we listed it as a pro as well, so it's a little dicey here. And the reason is, if anyone has had a relationship, whether it's on the school playground, siblings, a parent, etc., in our human life, there can be disagreements. A final con I have here is that the property still must go through probate after the second spouse dies. Now let's compare a few things. Co-ownership is the theme here. Joint tenants and tenants in the entirety allows co-owning a piece of property with others. So what happens if the co-owner in tenants in the entirety deeds out the other portion of the ownership? Well, they can't. Tenants by the entirety may not transfer their ownership interest without their spouse's agreement. As long as the two owners remain married, neither owner's interest may be sold, and the property cannot be divided or partitioned, even if one spouse successfully sues one in court. So you can see why it's important to run a title search when buying a house, because you need to know ownership. Let's give an example, and we will assume all the parties are in agreement. Paul and Mary own 123 Main Street as tenants in the entirety, husband and wife. The husband controls the property and deeds out his portion to the son, who is not Mary's son, and because he can't deed it out with the consent of his wife, let's just say that he got the consent. So Paul deeds out his proportion with his wife's consent to Paul's son, Joe. Now effectively owns the property with his father and his second wife as joint tenants. But for examples, let's say he's in bad health, so he decides to portion his to his niece, who then owns half the house with Mary and has the right of survivorship when Mary, Paul's wife, dies. This niece will then get the house. It can get very complicated very quickly. See how these forms of ownership all lead back to the definitions and what can be done? And here's a huge caveat. You have to check with your state as to what happened when tenants in the entirety deed out a portion of the property. It should be in your state legislature rules and regulations, and recognize those laws can be updated and changed by the state regulators. Finally, when you buy a house, and let's say the property you are buying is held in tenants in the entirety, or even tenants in common, This is what the title search is for. And you do want this done because you want the property to transfer to you as a clean slate, so to speak. And remember back to on our conversation about closing costs and options, those will be fees that are applied in this situation. And also, just so you know, these content pieces are not repeated in our class. I keep the content for the first time homebuyer workshop proprietary. It's not fair to pay for something and then just be able to hunt for it on the internet and find it for free. So you may be saying, okay, Julie, yeah, this is great, but why do I really need to know this? Well, the reason is mistakes can be made. And 99% of the time, and I say that again, 99.9% of the time, you never even know this is going on. You are never informed because it's part of the closing process where that professional entity doesn't tell you all of this. And it means you really don't know what your risks are. And procedurally, you are encouraged to buy title insurance, which is expensive. And it's not just one policy, but two, one for the bank and one for you, which is usually around $3,000, and that's wrapped up into the closing costs. So if you're buying a house with an ownership that is super straightforward, the question becomes, do I need that expense? We will talk about that when we define title insurance. We've covered a lot here and we are building these layers. Most people, if they're buying a home, are either going to choose joint tenants with the right of survivorship or tenants in common, and those classifications are widely recognized throughout the United States. For those that are ready to kickstart the process, we invite you to Homebuying Chaos Unwrapped, located on our website, the First Time Homebuyer Workshop.com, and I can't wait to empower you. Until next time, from the team at the First Time Homebuyer Workshop with Julie Marion, bye for now.